Have you looked back on your wine journey lately? What about you? Have you looked back on your wine journey lately? Well, we're going to do just that today. Also, what is the average wine enthusiast drinking now? And a wine out of the Iberian Peninsula, otherwise known as Spain and Portugal, that you should be looking for in your local wine store. All that and so much more on this episode of The Average Wine Enthusiast. Hi there everybody, my name is Mike LaPlante and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. On this episode, I thought we would talk about a wine out of Spain. It's also made in Portugal as well. Of course, that whole area is known as the Iberian Peninsula. Not sure what the history behind that is, but that's neither here nor there. And the wine that I'm talking about is called Mencia. Now, the way it's spelled, M-E-N-C-I-A, makes you think it should be called Mencia. But for whatever reason, that is not how it is pronounced. Doing some research, I have a few wine books. They tell you that it's pronounced Mencia, and there's probably some Spanish Mencia on there. And I know that the I is accented. So anyway, there is this wine that comes out of Spain, and it is really it's one of those wines, as a wine enthusiast, that I am very fond of. One, it's a dry red wine. That's one of my faves, that's for sure. And also the price of this wine it's one of those wines that you could pay more money for if it came from a different area, but it had the same characteristics. What else do I want to tell you? We'll talk about the characteristics of Mencia in a minute. What else I want to mention about it? It comes from a wine region in Spain that's called Bierzo, and that is up in the northwest region of Spain, and of course, southwest of that is Portugal as well, so it does grow there as well, but the center of Mencia production is in this Bierzo wine region. The ground that it grows in there is shale and granite. So if you think of your granite kitchen countertops, where that comes from, I know there's a lot of that in Italy as well, and of course they grow grapes in Italy. So that is the type of minerality you're going to get in these wines. And when you think of drinking wine, you don't want to be thinking mostly of minerality, but sometimes you do, and we'll talk about that. Why is it a good wine, and why is it getting popular? Well, for one, it's a complex wine, meaning it's not one-sided. There's a lot of wines that are popular right now that they taste like Jolly Ranchers or Skittles, or they're super fruit forward and not much else. Everything else that is part of that wine is pushed to the back because of its fruit forwardness. So this is a complex wine. So when a wine is complex, it tends to be more enjoyable to drink, and the texture of the wine is more discernible. Texture is one of those things that I think in your wine journey that you don't realize is a characteristic of it that is making you like it. So the absence of it will make you like any wine less. And when it's there, it's that thing that you don't really understand. What is it about this wine that I really like? And oftentimes we get confused. Our palates need to be developed, and that's all fun stuff, because the only way you can develop your palate is to drink more wine. Yeah. It is a medium-bodied wine, so it's not full-bodied, but then that's typical of complex wine, so you can actually discern different characteristics of the wine without the body taking over as well. It also is medium alcohol by volume. I think it's between 13 and 14, I believe. This one here is 13.5, so there you go. And it has very nice acidity. It doesn't lack acidity at all, and it's not too acidic. The flavor profile, when you think of, well, what does Mencia taste like? Well, it's very well balanced. Now, what does that mean? It means there is some fruity flavors there, but there's also some earthy minerality there as well. So when you put those two together, it creates a balanced wine that travels through your palate very nicely, and usually tickles different parts of your palate on the way down. I don't know if tickle's the right word, but you get the idea. So what do you get? You get unripened cherries. So that's the kind of cherries you eat and they're not sweet. And some people like that, a tartness. So you get a little tartness there. Some pomegranate, more tartness, with a little bit of sweetness on there. And some blackberry, which is, that's where you're going to get acidic fruit flavors. Also, one of the characteristics of Mencia is anise or licorice. You get that dark licorice flavor, usually near the back end of your palate, and that's the flavor that you're almost left within your mouth when you swallow it. And since it does grow in shale and granite, you're going to get a minerality there, almost like a crushed gravel flavor in your mouth, which doesn't sound very good, but when it's mixed with everything else, it really balances things out wonderfully. This is a bottle of Mencia that I picked up along with 11 other bottles of Mencia. So I did buy a case of this because it was on sale, and it's around $20. It might have been $22 and it was on sale for $20. It might have been $20 and on sale for $18, something like that. And I bought a bottle of it, and I loved it, went back and picked up a case of it. And that's just the way you can find yourself with yummy wines in your cellar or wherever you happen to keep wine. Now, this bottle of Mencia that I have here is from the Bierzo wine region, and it's called El Castro del Veltu. And it is 13.5% alcohol by volume, which I think I mentioned already. If you notice on the back label, it has one of these, I call it a sticker of authentication, because it reminds me of Rioja as well. And if you watch the Rioja show, which I highly suggest you do if you haven't already, it too is a wine out of Spain, much more popular and well known, that's for sure. But they too have these little stickers on the back that tell you that this is the real deal and this is the wine region it came from. So my big thing about Spanish wine is the fact, for one, it's something that I have that is from Europe. And I think of all the consumer goods that I have that come from Europe, and I'd have to say that the number one thing is wine. You might get some chocolates, or I have no idea. It's got to be one of the number one imports into North America is wine. So when you can get something in your house that it has been around, like they've been doing wine for a long time over there in Europe, and if you can get some of that in your house and be able to taste some of that, it's something that's very unique. When we're all inundated by stuff made in Asia or stuff made in Mexico, or large quantities of whatever that you're consuming are made in one location. It's nice to be able to have this thing called wine that comes from Europe that you're able to enjoy, and it's something that's very unique. And for $20, you are, you're transporting yourself somewhere else. That's what I get turned on about as far as wine from Spain, and of course wine from France as well. The issue with wine from France and wine from Italy is there's a lot of wine there that is super expensive. A lot of wine that is super expensive from both of those countries. There's a lot of good deals there as well, but there's a good percentage compared to Spain that that it costs a lot of money to buy those bottles. Whereas in Spain, I'm sure you can spend $100 on a bottle of wine from Spain, but there isn't as many of those out there. There's wine regions such as Bierzo that is making great wine, and they're not charging a lot of money for it. I wanted to talk again about our wine journey that we're at. It would be a good idea, I think, if you see where you're at in your wine journey, where you started. When did you start liking wine? And you think of all the wines that you've had in the past, and you ask yourself, would I go and buy another bottle of this? That first bunch of wine, they say, oh, this is a great wine, and you end up buying that wine for a month or 2 months or whatever, and you ask yourself, would I go back and buy another bottle of that years later? Probably not, because your taste and your palate has developed to a point where you can appreciate better wine. And then, of course, there's wine trends that I also did a show on, and that I suggest you go check that out. And as far as wine trends go, that can also influence us as to what wine we buy. I can remember very distinctively being with our friend who lives in Northern California wine country. And I remember being at a winery. It was Ledson. And the only reason I remember is because I remember drinking it, and I remember our friend talking about it and giving me descriptors of it, and me thinking, this has got to be the best wine I have ever had. And she's telling me why it's good wine. It was fruit forward and jammy, and had all these extracted flavors to it. So I remember thinking that this is the best wine that I've ever had. And as I look back on that, I think, would I buy a bottle of Ledson now? Absolutely, but it would not be the only wine I would want. Having tried other wines that are not so fruit forward, that have other flavor profiles in them, and that you can appreciate a balanced wine, a wine with complexity, a wine with some texture to it, good acidity, good tannins, and body that can stand the test of time. All those things that you learn about wine can help you along on your journey. So I think it's a good idea every once in a while to look back and see where you have been on your wine journey. And right now, my wine journey tells me that if I see a Mencia out there for less than $25, I should probably buy it. And I just said Mencia. It's Mencia. Don't ask me. Okay, that brings us to that part of the show where we learn what the average wine enthusiast is drinking now. Well, right this minute, I'm drinking some rosé because my whistle needs some wetting. And this rosé here is the same bottle of rosé I was drinking the last show I recorded. If I ever see this in a wine store, I usually pick it up because it's really good dry French rosé, which I find to be some of the best rosé out there. And I suggest you do the same. Yummy. Good with eggs too. So what is the average wine enthusiast drinking besides dry French rosé? I'm drinking dry red French wine is what I'm drinking. Don't ask me why I took off the vacuum vent off of this, because I opened this last night. I'm finding that you open a bottle of wine, and if you can drink a bottle and a half, that'd be good. Or if you can only drink a half a bottle, leave yourself with half a bottle of wine. I remember saying, leave yourself with a glass. But if you can leave yourself with a half a bottle, then you're doing really good, because you can decant another bottle while you're drinking the second half of this bottle here. Anyway, I got a half bottle here, or even more, of a wine out of Nîmes, France. Speaking of old world wine. And it is called Chateau de Neige. Not exactly sure what that means. I know neige is snow, but I don't think it smells. I don't think it smells the same as snow. I don't think it's spelled the same as snow. It is, like I say, it's out of Nîmes, France, and just knowing what kinds of grapes they use in that neck of the woods, definitely there's some Grenache in here. Let's see if it says on the back. Oh, it does. Perfect. 70% Grenache, 15% Syrah, and 15% Carignan. So there you go. Some of my favorite wine is Grenache and Syrah blend, which is the Côte d'Aron, classic blends right there. And for whatever reason, I'm really I gravitate towards those wine varietals. And of course, in France, everything's blended. So Nîmes is not necessarily well, it's definitely not part of the Côte d'Aron appellation area there. It's actually west of that. And it has its own little wine region there. And there's a delicious rosé that comes out of there, out of the Costière de Nîmes. And this isn't part of the Costière, I don't believe either, but it is made in the Nîmes area. And I highly suggest you picking up a bottle of this. You can see it at least once a year in the French wine section of your local wine store. So now you know what the average wine enthusiast is drinking. I guess that's going to do it for this episode of the show. I would like to thank you very much for watching. And if you can, turn your friends on to the show. That would be much appreciated. Some people who like wine almost as much as you, because you really like wine, because you're watching videos on YouTube about wine. And there's lots of them out there. I'm glad you honed in on the Average Wine Enthusiast show. I'd also like to thank the Big Organ Trio for letting me use their music on the show. If you have any comments, leave them down below. What do you think about your wine journey? Where are you at? Let me know. Until next time, my name is Mike LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. Salute!